Okay, so Norm, let's start today by discussing Mark Meadows' immunized testimony. I know we're going to get to my testimony before the New York Attorney General, our unsinkable Attorney General Tish James's $250 million baseline civil fraud case. But before we start on me, I want to talk to you today, and I want to start by discussing Mark Meadows' immunized testimony in Donald Trump's election subversion case. What does Meadows have on Trump, Giuliani, and the rest of them that could prove to be a knockout punch?
What Meadows has on Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani and the rest of the coup crew, the coup crew, is an insider's perspective, a bird's eye view on exactly how the coup unfolded, who did what, the skeletons that come dancing out of the closet, the bodies that are buried that he can exhume, and above all, direct testimony based on firsthand conversations with his co-conspirator, Donald Trump. The federal case where Meadows is cooperating is all about nailing Trump. He's the only named defendant. There are unindicted co-conspirators, including two of those who pled guilty in Georgia. They're going to have a hard time defending themselves when Smith comes after them. But the main evidence that Meadows offers right now is what was going on in Trump's head and proof that he knew he lost, unlike Meadows and unlike you, refuses to come clean about his prior lies, and therefore faces substantial criminal exposure. On March 4th, 2024, trial of the century isn't strong enough, Michael. The trial of the millennium, when Donald Trump goes on trial before Judge Tanya Chutkan and a jury, a District of Columbia jury, here in our federal courthouse in Washington.
Yeah, and don't forget, March 22nd, he's supposed to be starting the criminal trial for the District Attorney of New York, the Alvin Bragg case, which clearly is going to get pushed back if the Washington, D.C. case, starts first. But again, when you're plagued by as many indictments and cases as Donald is, well, sometimes one case is going to have to take precedence over another. But, ABC News on this reported that sources had told them that Meadows informed Smith's team, Jack Smith is who I'm referring to, that he repeatedly, Mark Meadows, who, I have no regard for this guy, and I told him when I was testifying before the House Oversight Committee, I know what you're doing, and look at what happened to me. What do you think is going to happen to you? And holy shit, 5 years later, right, since that 2018 testimony, well, the shit's coming to his backyard now. But he repeatedly told Trump in the weeks after the 2020 presidential election that the allegations of significant voting fraud coming to them were baseless.
Yes.
I mean, then, according to the same sources, Meadows also told the federal investigators that Trump was being, and here's the quote, dishonest with the public when he first claimed to have won the election only hours after the polls closed on November 3rd of 2020. That was even before the final results came in.
Yes, but the reason that those kinds of things are important, that the claims were baseless, that Trump was being dishonest, is not just for Meadows' opinion. Oh, in my view, the claims were baseless. Oh, in my view, Trump was dishonest. No, it's because he'll talk about his conversations with Donald Trump. including Trump reportedly admitting to Meadows. Cassidy Hutchinson says she was present, admitting to Meadows that he lost the election. He knew he lost that election, and that makes the whole attempted coup, the big lie, the effort to overturn the 2020 election, which is still being perpetuated, by the way. The big lie is still going. Trump talks about it all the time. That makes all of that evidence of Donald Trump's bad intent. And that's what prosecutors are going to have to prove, criminal intent. So on the jury, the questions are going to be, now, did Mr. Trump, did you believe that the election was stolen? No. Now, did you ever discuss that with Mr. Trump? Yes. What did he tell you? He told me he lost. Game over.
Well, okay.
It proves Trump's criminal intent.
Okay, so now it's where we're going to bring in the last couple of days of my life, the big showdown, as the press like to call it, considering I have not been in a room and have not seen Trump since, 2018.
Indeed.
Donald Trump, in the past, has called Mark Meadows one of the former president's closest and highest ranking aides in the White House, a special friend, and a great chief of staff. As good as it gets. Now all of a sudden, now mind you, in the past, Donald has turned around and called me brilliant, a fantastic lawyer, a guy who can get anything done, as good as it gets. Now all of a sudden, I'm the convicted felon, I'm the rat, I am the serial liar, the convicted liar, and so this is what he's going to do to Mark Meadows. It's what he does to anyone and everyone who now opposes him. When you are on his side, when you are carrying his proverbial water of bullshit, then all of a sudden you're the best. You're the absolute best. You're as good as it gets. You're smart. You're dedicated. You're loyal. You're everything. And then all of a sudden, when things aren't going the way he wants it, you're a liar. You're a cheat. You're a scumbag. You're a rat. You're a felon. You're a serial liar. And then he gets his minion. He gets his minions of moronic MAGA jerk-offs around him to start spewing the same shit. When I sat on that stand, I had fuckers like Chris Kise, who's of the three lawyers that were at the table, he's the only truly legitimate lawyer that was at the table, get up and calling me a serial liar. I lie about everything. Nothing that comes out of my mouth is true. I was going to ask him, but they wouldn't let me, of course, because I'm merely a witness on the stand. Well, did I lie when I said that Donald doesn't beat Melania? Did I lie when I said that there is no such thing as the P tape? Did I lie when I turned around and said that Donald did not father a child out of wedlock with a ex-employee, a woman who was working at one of the Trump buildings? Are those lies? Well, you can't have it both ways. And the problem, though, is Chris Kise is throwing away his entire career. I mean, he'll be shit after this. And if he thinks he's going to be the one and only lawyer that Donald doesn't fuck over, because Trump doesn't care that it took you years to get your law license, that you had to take exams in order. He doesn't care. You know why? Because after Chris Kise fucks up, and after he, like the Rudy Giulianis and the Mark Eastmans or the Meadows or whoever else, he'll find somebody else. In his mind, there's always another idiot to follow him that he can get for not a lot of money. I mean, then you have that guy, Cliff Robert. I don't know. Personal injury, whatever the hell he does, small time civil litigator. And then no need for me to even discuss Alina Habba walking back and forth in her high heel shoes. The only thing that was missing from that scene was a cameraman in front of her and somebody holding a fan, because all she was doing was playing to him and to his ego. She didn't care. She knew this case is fucked. But somewhere along the line, these three assholes sold Donald on a bill of goods that by discrediting me, by trying to denigrate me, casting me as a liar, a serial liar, and so on, that all of a sudden they were going to make a motion for a directed verdict. The judge was going to grant it. Trump was going to walk out, hands in the air like Rocky Balboa after his first win, Rocky II. And he's going to declare victory, not just on this case, but on all of the cases. It's all part of the great witch hunt. But here's what happened. Judge turned around and said, "You're joking, right?" He goes, "Absolutely denied." And Cliff Robert comes back and he asks again, "No, Your Honor, you have to do it. If Tish James's case was predicated on a serial liar and everything that he says has been proven to be a lie, then therefore this case cannot exist." Judge turned around and said, "I'll say it to you again. Absolutely denied." Michael Cohen is a witness. I don't know if he's the key witness. I don't know if I would call any of them a key witness. There's enough documentation on this case to fill this courtroom, and there's plenty of witnesses that are going to come to the stand. Absolutely denied.
Yep. It's funny because you really came to the same bottom line as I did. You know, I always tell people about you that Michael, whatever he may have said or done in the past, has always been strictly honest with me. And I got asked on television, I think this week, well, why did he plead guilty to something he didn't do if he's so honest? And I pointed them to Judge Jed Rakoff's book, Why the Innocent Plead Guilty, as a criminal defense lawyer. It's part of the systemic injustice, the pressure on family members, often on family members, that leads to that.
You know the story on that. First of all, the full title on that. Yeah, the full title on that book, though, is Why the Innocent Plead Guilty and the Guilty Go Free. I read it when I was in Otisville. And just for my listeners, I mean, because, this podcast is growing by leaps and bounds. I want everyone to remember, I was given 48 hours from Friday at 5:30 p.m. to Monday morning, 9 a.m., to either come in and plead guilty, or the Southern District of New York was filing an 80-page indictment that was going to include my wife.
Terrible. Terrible. It's not right. So when people say, well, why? So that's the explanation there. And then I thought you made a very a good point on the other question you were asked about the way Donald Trump gives instructions, like a mob boss, you testified. So the bottom line is, this is not a jury trial. And because that may be because of Donald Trump's habits in retaining lawyers, it's not clear legally if these attorneys were entitled to a jury trial, but they didn't ask for one, so we'll never know.
Right.
We'll never know if Trump could have had a jury trial here. This judge wasn't going to fall for those kinds of shenanigans, and obviously he didn't. Now, they're in a lot of trouble in front of Judge in Oregon, Engoron. They're in a lot of trouble in front of Judge Engoron because he has already granted partial summary judgment, and the evidence that has come in is overwhelming evidence of Donald Trump's civil violations that are alleged here. And this case there's going to be, he's already ordered that the certificates of doing business for the New York businesses, many of them be revoked. There's been an emergency appeal that's going to be addressed. And I think Trump is facing, the reason he's showing up, he's paying more attention to this trial than he is to any other proceeding, because so much of his identity is wrapped up in these businesses, in those certificates, in being able to do business, and because he's cheap as can be. And I mean, if the guy's got to have a $250 million, that's going to kill him. That's why he may not always have the finest caliber of lawyer.
So let's just go back for a quick second, and I want my listeners to understand what happened there. Alina Habba was the attorney who was questioning me. And the questions that she was asking me are all yes or no. You can't say anything else other than yes or no, which makes it very difficult, because doing anything that has to do with Donald, it's not always a yes or no answer. I know that that's hard to say. It's either a yes or a no. That's not true. So what happened is, she had asked me whether or not I told the truth when I spoke to the Senate Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence in 2018, and I told them that did Donald Trump specifically state to you that you should go and inflate the numbers on his statement of financial condition? And I was like, well, no. And that's a true answer. They kept wanting to say, it's crazy. They want me to I don't know what they wanted me to do. I said no. But then on redirect by the New York Attorney General, by the prosecutor, they said, clearly there was something that you wanted to talk about. There's something you wanted to say that explains. Go ahead, Mr. Cohen, explain to the court. And what I said was, this is not new for me when I say, and most people acknowledge, that Donald Trump speaks like a mob boss. He did not specifically, because that was the word, specifically. He did not specifically come out and say, Michael Allen Weisselberg, I want you to inflate the numbers on my statement of financial condition to $6 billion. Go into the back, figure it out, and come back to me. He did not do that. What he would do is say, well, this says I'm only worth $5.5 billion. In fact, I'm worth at least $6, probably $8 billion. Go figure it out and come back. That's what he's saying. So is he specifically telling us to inflate it? No. Do we know what he wants? Yes. And how did we know that that's what he wanted? Because the fucker signed off on it. He signed off on it. So you don't have to specifically, like a mob boss, say, hey, I want you to go kill Joe, right? Or I want you to go kill Bob, right? No, you could turn around and there are many ways that hey, you got to go take care of Bob. Go take care of Joe. They know what he means. They don't mean, hey, go to his house and help him fix his garbage disposal. They know exactly what he means because they've been around the guy long enough to understand the code. And that's what I explained. And that sent Trump into a tizzy, right? And then all of a sudden, after they moved, because these three idiots, these legal jerk-offs, they sold Trump a bill of goods that he was going to get a directed verdict. There's no way that the judge could say no. And when the judge laughed at him, when Engoron started to laugh, and he goes, denied, absolutely denied. Denied. Trump smashes his hands on the table, throws his hands, picks himself up, starts to walk out. Secret Service was completely thrown off. They go running after him. I mean, this was really a shit show. Ultimately, and I still have not been able to find anybody that knows what really went on, but Trump didn't leave the building right away. You would have thought that after that, he's picking himself. The judge wanted to see him, and he came back. They had him in a green room, in a waiting room for over an hour until he was brought back. I suspect, and especially during the same day, as great as my testimony turned out to be, the guy who really stole the anti-Trump show was Trump himself by going ahead and violating the most limited gag order that may have ever have been issued in the history of gag orders. You cannot talk about my staff or witnesses, and you just, otherwise I'm going to hold you in contempt. But like the petulant, idiotic child that he is, he did it anyway. And then here's the beauty of it. Engoron wasn't having any of this bullshit. And so he told the lard ass to put his fat ass on the witness stand. And he made him under oath swear under the penalties of perjury as to who he was talking about when he went outside the courtroom and decided to speak to the gaggle of reporters. And he turns around and he goes, I wasn't talking about your law clerk. I was talking about Michael Cohen. And the judge didn't buy that bullshit. So here's the crazy thing. Not only did Trump lie to the judge while on the stand under oath, Kais, Robert, Haba, from the reports that I read, were all swearing up and down that Donald's telling the truth, that he was talking about me. So these fuckers who keep calling me a liar and a perjurer and so on, who's the one that's doing it? They are.
Well, Michael, I've done criminal law practice for more than 3 decades. And all you can ask is when somebody gets involved with a bunch of crooks, as you were, is that they make amends, they do their best to tell the truth and do the right thing. And these cross-examinations are often dramatic. You stuck to your guns. The judge clearly was not swayed by their arguments. And I think they're going to suffer a series of additional losses in this case. But here's the most amazing thing. The headlines were not about Michael Cohen, this, that, and the other. The headlines were about Donald Trump's lie and his punishment that day. And he was furious about it. Why? And it was his rage at you. This came into this. He got out there and he says, the judge is very partisan. Words to the effect. The judge is very partisan, but the person sitting next to him is even more partisan. No, the person sitting next to him was his law clerk. You were sitting a distance away, a little below, right? Mm-hmm. And then he says, what are you talking about? He says, I was referring to Cohen. And he had to swear under oath. And the judge says, that is not credible. In other words, Trump lied. And he fined him $10,000 under the gag order for attacking his clerk. And even more important than all that, Trump is digging his own grave because as he continues to do this, he's going to face more and more serious consequences, including eventually the judge is going to get fed up and say, you're going to need to spend the night in jail.
Well, it's funny because I think the judge's exact words to Trump, I don't find you a credible witness. So yes. It's funny because the previous literally 2 days, 16 hours of them calling me a liar. Look, let's be very clear about one thing. Donald Trump, and you know this as being the lead attorney in the second impeachment of Trump. The first impeachment of Trump. How many lies did Trump tell during his 4-year administration? My understanding is it's over 35,000. They actually stopped counting because the number didn't even matter anymore. Over 35,000 lies.
That was the assessment of the Washington Post. What can you say to that?
What do? I don't know what you say to it, but what you do if you're Donald Trump is you
lie
deflect.
more. Lie more.
Correct. Every single person that has now come out and stated that Donald is not telling the truth, whether it's on the January 6th insurrection, whether it's on the voting, whether it's on anything, whether it's on his statement of financial condition, liar, 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 liar. And he keeps getting his minions to say the same thing. But, you brought up a topic that I just want to ask you. And you know Trump's nature because you've been around D.C. long enough. Do you see Trump continuing to violate Judge Engoron's gag order? And if so, clearly the fines have no effect on him at all. $5,000, $10,000.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean shit to him at all.
No.
So what do you think? I mean, do you think that Judge Engoron will turn to, let's say, real contempt, right? And
eventually,
jail?
Yes, I do. Eventually, for sure. He is not going to. He's a tough cookie. We saw that. He's not going to allow Donald Trump to continue to attack court staff. And if Trump persists, he's going to end up spending some time in an overnight room. And let me tell you, it ain't going to be like Mar-a-Lago. It's going to have bars on it. So, yes, I think that is coming. Now, maybe Trump doesn't give a damn about $5,000 or $10,000, except he's so cheap, Michael. He's so cheap, so maybe he does. But I think that, Trump knows where this is headed. He may think it helps him. He may think the mugshot helped him, led to one of his biggest fundraising days. He may think being stepped back, as we put it, is good for him, good for his brand. But I do think that's where we're headed. And I think the DC judge needs to turn her gag order back on. She's paused it pending additional legal consideration. Stay, it's called. No, turn that back on. He's attacking Mark Meadows. He's attacking witnesses. He's attacking people right and left. No.
So that's what I wanted to ask you, because the gag order is not just, it is a limited gag order, but it wasn't just for the judge's law clerk and staff. It's for witnesses also. This Mandarin Mussolini scumbag walks out the court doors, and the first thing he's doing is he's attacking me again. When is somebody going to start to protect the witnesses? You have to be insane to even accept a fucking subpoena if the court's not going to protect you. Look, say whatever you want about Donald, all right? He's insane. He's loose-lipped. He doesn't care about the law. He's willing to violate even the gag orders.
Yeah.
Fine. That's fine. But he's doing so at the expense and at the detriment of witnesses.
It can't be allowed. And that's why Judge Chutkan needs to follow the toughness of Judge Engoron and turn her gag order back on. That was direct witness intimidation when he told Mark Meadows that first he praises Meadows, right? He's nice to him. And then he tells Meadows in the text, and then he says, but all caps. When you think about it, after being hounded like a dog for years, told you'll be going to jail, if you say bad things about Trump, we won't put you in prison. If you make up really horrible stuff, we'll put up a statue. Some people would make that deal, but they are weaklings and cowards and so bad for the future. Well, we know Mark Meadows did make that deal. So he's attacking him, and that is a threat when you have somebody with the power of Donald Trump, when you have the man who has did the "will be wild" tweet about January 6th, summoned the mob. Then he lit the fire with his speech on the ellipse, and he threw the burning torch at the Capitol, where it became a conflagration. Those social media postings are very, very dangerous. And everybody understands what he's doing there. That's a shot across the bow against Meadows, and I think it's terribly wrong.
Well, and it is. But the point I was really trying to make is what he does is he didn't just do it to Mark Meadows. He did it outside the courtroom about me. He did it before I was even coming in on the second day to sit on the stand. And while I respect the judge for really holding Donald more than anybody else to accountability, yes, he did it for his law clerk because, as Judge Engoron said, the things you're doing, Donald, is going to get somebody hurt or worse, killed. What about the witnesses is the point I've been making all along. It's something we've been talking about now on Mea Culpa and on my political beatdown. It's something I talk about on the press. I was on with MSNBC with Nicole Wallace. I was on with Reverend Al, with Laura Coates and you on CNN. I've been with on. And I'm like, my safety is in jeopardy because of Donald Trump's mouth. And it shouldn't be that way. And Judge Engoron should have really ripped him a new asshole, certainly much bigger than what he did. Look, let me give you another one. So not only does he attack me in one of his latest ones, he attacks Maggie Haberman too. So he writes the New York Times and a third-rate reporter named Maggie Haberman. You saw that? I mean, known as Crooked H. Flunky, who I don't speak to, nothing, going out of their way. That's actually an old one. That was actually a good one. Where he actually is going out there to destroy me and our relationship and so on. I mean, there's so many of these emails where it's just one attack on me after another, after another, and after another. And he just doesn't know how to stop. But he has now another one against me and with Maggie and this and that. Someone has to turn around and explain to him. It's not going to be his lawyers. I don't know who the hell it's going to be, but somebody has to do it, and they need to do it ASAP because he actually, again, speaking like the mob boss that he is, he wants somebody to get hurt. That's who he is. That
seems to be the danger. Yeah. That is the danger. And I think that was a direct threat that he issued against Meadows. And I think he was playing games with the judge's law clerk. And the judge called him on it. I like Judge Engoron. He's tough. And, he didn't have some long litigation process. The first time Trump attacked his law clerk, he immediately called everybody before him, slapped the gag order down, and he's enforced it ever since. I like that. And he's escalating. That's the way that can be a lesson for everybody. That's how, but I do think that Trump has the most formidable set of justice seekers and officials when you look around. And I'll tell you, there's some exceptions, but Judge Engoron, Judge Chutkan has already said Trump is not, or presidents are not king, and Trump is not president. She's ruled against him before. Those are good judges. The Judge McAfee, some people were wondering that the guy who has the Georgia case, oh my God, he's a former prosecutor. He's only been on the bench for a few months. He runs that courtroom like he's been there for 50 years. He's been terrific. I think the one place where there have been some questions about the judge is the one who has the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case, Eileen Cannon. Mm-hmm. But still, she has not relaxed her May trial date. That will be the test. Will she stick with that date or not? It's some very good judges. And then look at the prosecutors. I forgot Judge Marchand in the Alvin Bragg case. He's been terrific. Trump
Yep.
has attacked him. And then the prosecutors are very good. You have Tish James who's doing the civil case. The New York AG, very tough, very strong. Jack Smith is a ferocious prosecutor, known as one of the toughest. He was prosecuting war criminals in the Hague. He's well suited to go after Trump. Then you have Fani Willis. She's indomitable. She's racking up the guilty pleas. And Bragg is terrific. I mean, these are some excellent, excellent judges and prosecutors. So Donald Trump is meeting his match, Michael.
Yeah. So let me then ask you this, because clearly Donald can't control himself in this case. How does that bode for when the criminal trials start in earnest? I mean, look, as you've said, and everybody hopefully understands, this New York Attorney General civil fraud case is civil. This is all right now about how much. This is a money case. This is not about prison or anything. You know which ones are? The other four that you just mentioned, right? Those are all criminal cases. I don't see any of the judges in the 4 criminal cases putting up with any of this bullshit.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that's why I think Donald Trump, even before conviction, is probably going to be facing some time, to think about his dangerous, false, ugly, and in my view, contemptuous in the legal sense. They violate the law. And he can be punished, including in the extreme cases where you build this kind of a record. That's what Judge Engoron is doing, and he's doing it so brilliantly. He's building a record, so when he says, well, you're going to have to spend the night in jail, and there'll be an immediate appeal to the second department, right? The second department takes the appeals out of that court. The appellate judges will say, no, there's a record here. We're not going to give Donald Trump a break. So that's what's going on. And of course, what's remarkable about our conversation is, look, I've litigated a lot of cases involving Donald Trump. I've opened hundreds of files, legal matters involving him. Everything from the impeachment to the emoluments case to a ton of litigation against his administration, to amicus briefs in many of the major criminal matters. But you're in the middle of it because you stepped up and you did the right thing. And it's not pretty. It's not easy. I'm sure that was not fun being on the stand, but you're doing your best to do the right thing. And I admire that tremendously, Michael. I really do. And of course, it's remarkable that you have me on your podcast where we talk about it because it's living history. Yeah.
Well, look, one of the things that we were trying to get introduced, interestingly enough, and the judge didn't allow it in, which I was a little bit surprised at, because Alina Habba spent an incredible amount of time going through the SDNY's memorandum, sentencing memorandum. What we wanted to do is introduce my sentencing memorandum. And I would ask all of my listeners, Google Petrillo, Petrillo, sentencing memo on behalf of Michael Cohen. And if you look to like pages 15 through 18, it talks about the tax evasion. It talks about how there are elements in law to tax evasion, and that not one of those elements existed in my case. And the HELOC is even stupider. That was the 6th count that was brought against me, where I had 20% of debt on my property and that the property was worth 10 times the amount of the HELOC. how could the bank have been misrepresented when I'm not even the one that filled it out? It was filled out by my banker, this guy Gary Farrow over First Republic, and I had a HELOC on the same property for a decade before that. The whole thing is just absolutely crazy. And so we were trying to get that introduced. Chris Kise gets up and, you didn't know who was actually doing what. All three of them, they all wanted to make their statements. Why? Because they're all playing to a party of one. But you know what? Done with that. I want to go back to what's going on in the other matter, right? And I want to talk for a second about the plea deals that were also taken by Jenna Ellis. Yeah, by Jenna Ellis and Sidney Powell. Because that appears, it's just as ominous as the one that Mark Meadows pled to. So if you would, Norm, discuss with me and my listeners.
Mark Meadows hasn't pled. He's cooperating.
Correct. I apologize. You're right. He's cooperating. So just discuss with me, if you would, what their testimony could expose Trump to.
Well, it's very interesting because when you put together Powell and Chesborough, for starters, you pull the rug out from under both legs of Trump's defense. And then while he's wobbling, Ellis really strikes the knockout punch. The attack on the 2020 election by the coup crew, we refer to that as a Cohenism. I'm trying to equal your rhetorical splendor. The attack on the 2020 election was based on stood on two legs. One was the facts. Donald Trump claiming he actually won the election. The other one was the law. He says, because I actually won the election or because there's these questions, I can get these phony electoral certificates and use them to pressure Mike Pence to not to recognize the actual winner on January 6th.
Right, to fail to certify.
So that's factual and illegal. Well, Sidney Powell was the number one purveyor of the false factual assertion that Donald Trump actually won or that there were serious questions. He didn't win and there were no questions. She's now pled guilty. So that's pulls the rug out from under one leg. Then the other leg, the law, Ken Chesbrough was the architect. Well, he's pled guilty to what? Conspiracy to file false documents, the electoral certificates. So that pulls the rug out from under the other leg. Then comes Jenna Ellis along, and she alone among the three, she says, I'm going to provide full cooperation. And she volunteered to the judge. She was misled. So I think that she will be a devastating witness against Donald Trump when she gets on the stand and she says, no, that was not true. I was misled. I no longer stand by that. I wouldn't have done it if I had known. She cried. She was emotional. That is going to really hit a jury. But it's not only Donald Trump that she's going to harm, and these other witnesses will testify too. It's also Rudy Giuliani, because these are three lawyers who worked for a fourth lawyer who was in charge, Rudy Giuliani. And Ellis, Chesbrough, Powell, Giuliani must be really squirming because they can devastate him. But reportedly, the prosecution isn't interested in doing a plea with him yet. He's going to have to agree to jail time, in my view, if he wants a plea. So I think it's bad for Trump. It's bad for Giuliani. It's bad for Eastman. And Meadows had better cut a deal in Georgia because they hang him too.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question then, because you brought up an interesting topic, right, about cutting deals. Norm, do you see a scenario where you ultimately see Trump realizing that he's fucked. He's going to prison. He's going to be found guilty if he lets these cases go to trial. But instead, cuts his own deal, pleads guilty for whatever the deal may ultimately be. Do you think that Jack Smith would even entertain a Trump deal at this point? Or do you think that Smith, because look, you said it first, he is a ferocious prosecutor. You think he's just going to want to push the case all the way?
No, if Trump is willing to accept jail time and plead guilty and accept responsibility, Jack Smith would consider a plea. But Michael, I know Trump from litigating against him. You really know him. What are the odds that he's going to do that before the election? Zero, in my opinion. Zero.
Yeah, I would say the answer to that is slim to none, and Slim left the building.
Yeah.
This is his only way out. He sees the presidential run. He sees the presidency as his get out of jail free card.
That's it.
And without it, he realizes that his ass is cooked and he's going to lose everything. Most specifically, forgetting about losing just all of his money, he's going to also lose his freedom.
Yeah, totally. Totally. There's
so let me ask
chance,
you this then.
Zero chance
Zero.
of wait. Zero until after the election. If Trump loses the election, and if there's no Republican who wins with the hope of pardoning Trump, then he probably, then it becomes a non-zero. I don't know what the odds are, but it's not, as long as he thinks he can get in the White House, or another Republican can, or a third-party candidate can get in there and pardon him, he's not pleading to anything. But when all odds are against him, when any chance is removed from the table, and you have another term of Biden, at that point he might say, yes, I'll plead. The problem is that will be post-conviction. There won't be very good deals.
Right. That's true. So then let me ask you it this way. As the prosecutors continue to work their way up the food chain, right, because they've gotten so many of the minor players to flip, then going after the bigger fish, they've largely succeeded now in that, right, with Sidney Powell and with Chesbro and Jenna Ellis. Do you see a scenario where Rudy Giuliani, Giuliani, really faced with going to prison for a very long time? You see, right now, he's still walking around. He's still carrying Donald's dirty water.
Yeah.
When he is ultimately going to be confronted with going to prison for a long time, and Trump refusing to fucking help him and to help to defray legal costs, do you think Rudy will flip on Trump and ultimately become a star witness? And if so, what does this then do to Trump?
Yeah.
Did I stump you on this one there, Norm?
No, I'm trying to think about the effects. I think, there's two questions embedded. I think Giuliani is likely to seek plea arrangements at some point in the state case. The guy's out of money. His life has been destroyed. He's just hired a lawyer who, lives in the Georgia, the hill country, hours away from Atlanta, because that's what he can afford. And he's got these people testifying against him. I think Giuliani is going to have to flip, but I don't think it'll matter to Trump until you get past November 2024. My own view is if Trump loses the Republican nomination somehow, he's going to try to run as a third-party candidate, a spoiler. He's going to blow up the party. So I don't think Trump is going to be off the reservation fully until after November. And then he is going to need to make some very tough choices.
So, it's funny because you're not the first person who I've heard say that. If he doesn't get the nomination, he's going to go third.
Well, you would know better. You would know better.
And so let me give you my perspective on it. I don't think so. He may threaten it so that no other Republican or the Republican Party has no choice but to accept him as the nominee. Again, at least now he has a 50-50 shot of becoming president and saving his ass. First of all, which would be the third party? He's going for the Independence Party? I don't think so. That's already taken, right? Was he going to go for the Green Party? Here's the reason why I say I'm not buying it. Because in order to get on the ballot in all the states, especially now as a Green Party or whatever party, the Donald Party, whatever third party that it's going to be, you're going to have to spend an enormous amount of money. Now, people may turn around listening to this and say, yeah, but he has that ability. He's already raised and has money sitting in the kitty. Well, here's the difference. A lot of the money that's sitting is in the super PAC. And if you read the fine print on the super PAC, you know what it says? 90% of all monies received to the super PAC, Donald has total discretion over that money. It does not need to be used for political purpose. It doesn't need, he can keep it. That's how he's paying to fix his airplane or to fly around on the aircraft. 90 cents of every dollar that these idiots are giving to him in the PAC. Basically, you're giving it to Donald to keep for his pocket. He is not going to spend that money, which he considers his, and that could be the only money that he ultimately gets left with. He's not going to spend that in order to get onto a third party, as the third party nominee, when he knows that there's zero chance that he could win. Zero.
Rudy Giuliani is going to face increasing pressure to plead. This troika of Ellis, who he described as his number two. Think of how much she has on him. Chesbrough worked with him. Powell worked with him. That's going to put the pressure on him. He's running out of money. He's having a lot of other problems. He can't pay his bills. He can't hang on to lawyers. He got some country lawyer representing him who lives 3 hours outside of Atlanta now in this criminal case. The pressure is going to be too intense. Giuliani is going to flip, and that is really going to put the screws to Donald Trump. But still, Trump is not going to budge until you get past November 2024. He's going to be playing for that prospect that a Republican gets elected and pardons him. Maybe he's the Republican candidate. He pardons himself or orders DOJ to drop the case federally. If he were to plead in the state case, it would compromise that federal play. So don't expect him to do anything until after November 2024. After that, I think the prospect of Giuliani turning on him, all these others, there'll be many more cooperators in the state case by then. There'll be others like Meadows cooperating in the federal case. It becomes a non-zero chance, as I say, that he cooperates. Now, will he actually, if he loses the Republican nomination, turn to a third-party race? Michael Cohen knows that better than I do, as I've said. I will say this, Michael, about your Trump prognostication abilities. So people should listen to Michael when he makes a an analysis of what Trump is going to do. You were the first person to say to me when I was interviewing you in the earliest days of the impeachment at the beginning of 2019, because I wanted to impeach on some of these, the 2016 election interference through hush money payments. You have evidence on that. Some of the financial frauds, particularly using his White House position to perpetuate his financial empire on such a false, allegedly fraudulent basis. I interviewed Michael. I came to New York, and I love to tell the story. Michael said to me, "Norm, one other thing you got to watch out for. You're not asking me the right question." "What is that, Michael?" I'm paraphrasing. He says, "You've got to watch out for the 2024 election. That guy is not going to leave the White House willingly. We're going to have," and I'm paraphrasing, "non-peaceful transfer of power." I put the exact words down in my book about the impeachment, A Case for the American People, because they were so important. And it really got me thinking. And later on, when I was doing all my work on democracy protection, in part it was because Michael warned me. So, folks, when he talks, listen.
So, Norm, let me jump into something else here for a second, because I want to talk about Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which says that a public official is not eligible to assume public office if they, and the quote is, engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States. Do you see any possible scenario where this would keep Trump off the ballot?
We will know much more about this by the next time I'm on your podcast, Michael, because that's the question that's being litigated in several places around the country now. The first trial will be in Colorado starting shortly. Certainly the things that Donald Trump did were as bad as the acts of insurrection that some of those who were barred from office in the 19th century after the Civil War. What Trump did is as much an insurrection as what they did, but there's a lot of legal uncertainties, and it's important that it's being tested. That question is really for the courts, so we should keep a very sharp eye out on how they adjudicate it. But I have written about the powerful fit between the 14th Amendment and the conduct of Donald Trump. The January 6th committee thought DOJ should prosecute him for insurrection. And you have some fantastic lawyers who are litigating this matter. My former colleagues at Crew, which I co-founded, Crew is bringing the case. Now we're just going to have to see what happens.
Yeah. And so, look, as the hour comes very quickly, you know that whenever we spend time together, it always goes by quickly. For the last question, I want to switch gears one last time. And I want to discuss the election of this new House Speaker, MAGA Mike Johnson. Do you think that he'll prove to be a stabilizing figure in the party? Or do you think that he'll just move the Republican House further to the right and continue to normalize the MAGA agenda? And I say this because anyone that gets praised by Matt Gaetz, is far right and is a far right fucking lunatic. And listening to this guy talking about Jesus and Roe versus Wade and the fact that, no woman should be permitted an abortion. I start to think to myself, holy shit, this is not the guy that I could see being a unifier of the Republican Party unless all the Republicans in the party are the same as them.
The future of MAGA Mike is able to be forecast by his past. I got to know him on the first Trump impeachment. He's soft-spoken, he's cordial, but Trump had no ferocious and, in my view, no more dishonest, no more ferocious, no more dishonest a defender than Mike Johnson. Don't be fooled by that mild demeanor. He is a hardcore MAGA follower. You want more proof? He led the congressional effort to file an amicus brief in the United States Supreme Court saying Texas could sue to throw out the votes for Biden in Pennsylvania, even though Biden clearly won. It was nakedly anti-democratic. Even the Supreme Court, dominated by Republicans, laughed it out of court, refused to consider it. That's who we're talking about here. So, yeah, I do not think he's going to be a stabilizing influence. I think he's going to be a dangerous one, and we got to keep a sharp eye on him.
Yeah, well, I totally agree. I mean, I look at him and all I see is a wolf in sheep's clothing. That's really all that I see. He's trying to, as you said, portray some sort of a very even hand. The problem that the Republicans have is greater than what most people think. It's exactly what happened to Kevin McCarthy, right? Where it only takes a couple of people to turn around to say, you know what, this shit just ain't working for us. And they get together and they put in the, impeachment, the vote of no confidence. And next thing you know, once again, the House doesn't have a leader. But, Norm, I just want to say to you, you are the final, listen to this one, you are the final guest on this specific RSS feed for Mea Culpa. We're actually moving the RSS feed over to the MeidasTouch network. So, people in order to go, so people, exactly. So, if to get all the new episodes, you're going to have to then just subscribe to the new RSS feed. So when you come back next, you will be on the new MeidasTouch network RSS feed for Mea Culpa podcast.
Join us on the new Meidas Network RSS feed as one of the friends of the pod and a friend of Michael. There's no better way that you can spend your podcasting attention than hanging out with Michael and his friends, of whom I consider myself to be a close one.
As do I. So, Norm, my friend, let me, as always, say thank you for joining me. Thank you for your insight. Boy, do we have a lot to talk about. There's just too much going on all at the same time, from Maine to Israel to Ukraine, to our national politics, to the fighting. This is it's just really too much. So I ask everybody, take a deep breath. Things will be okay together. As the Mea Culpa podcast listeners and supporters, together we will fight this. We will ensure that 2024, there will be a massive blue tidal wave that runs over the entire Republican Party, and that we will take back more houses. We will take back more states. We will take the House back. We'll continue to control the Senate. And yes, Joe Biden will be president in 2024. So, my friend Norm, thank you, my brother, and I will see you, and I'll be speaking to you very soon.
Thank you, Michael. See you soon.